Easy tech. You know what? Sometimes when we start this podcast, it's 20 minutes of tech. Click that, do that, change that. But you've arrived and it's perfect.
What version of Windows are you on? Okay, now.
Windows 3.1. Not sure I've tackled that for a while.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. And this week, a conversation show exploring culture, change within culture, and how you can leverage culture to drive change. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van Rob.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
So, hello everybody, how you doing? You good?
Yeah, it's getting cold though, Dave. Winter has come. So we're from the winter is coming to it's here now. Shock.
It is chilly. It is chilly. But to warm us today with thought. I'm delighted to say we've got Alex Alves with us, a Global IT Director of Business Architecture at Unilever. Alex, good to see you. How are you today?
I'm fine, Dave. Thank you. Good to be here.
And is it cold where you are too?
Yes, it is. Very cold.
It is the season of... is it still the season of pumpkin spice lattes?
No, it's Christmas now, Dave. No. We've had that. Decorations going up. So if you have put your decorations up already, oh dear me. Or maybe, actually, you might be listening to this and going, it is December.
So as you have... a very elaborate process of decorating. Have you started this year yet?
No, it's actually finished now. The complete village, including skis and ice skating track. And it's done.
Very elaborate.
Spectacular. So Rob, I was confused about pumpkin spice latte. Is there anything confusing you this week?
Well, David. It's more of a where it's going to go confusion. So have you heard of Techno Platform Feudalism?
I've heard of all of those individual words. I'm not sure I have put together.
Just unpack this quickly. So in feudalism, or the traditional concept, you had lords and they owned the land. You had the vassals, provided service or protection in exchange for the land. And then you had the serfs who worked the land, right? That's how the money systems used to work back in the day, many, many hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Techno Platform Feudalism is wondering if there's a new style of economy rising. Well, you have the platform lords, and these are the large tech companies. You have the vassals or tenants. These are the content creators or the gig workers who use them. Mm-hmm. You have the serfs. That's us who consume the content.
Why do we always have to be the serfs? Right?
Oh, well, we're also kind of the vassals because we create this podcast, but we'll move on from that point.
All right,
and then, of course, there's the extractive nature of it, which is where the lords would get the money from the land and the workers. The platforms earn loads of money from these vassals or tenants or serfs creating the content and using it.
Okay.
And there's a lack of mobility or agency in there as well. So it's very difficult to do platform shift because there's a number of very small, very dominant global scale. So you get these characteristics of centralization of power, lack of alternatives, exploitation of data, and the creativity and this dependency, right? So you're ending up with the platforms are becoming the new feudalist nature of our society. And so there's this confusion in me going, is this just going to go back to a world where the technical platforms and the companies that own them are going to be basically running the show in all but name, and then the nation states will lose control? And we've seen a lot of things about elections and communication pathways and the algorithm influencing people differently. Or is it just we're going to defeat them through legislation, take more control? Because we've seen recently Australia legislating to say if you're under 16, you can't use these platforms, etc. And I am genuinely confused about where this is going to go. Are we going to go back to the dark ages, or are we going to end up in this progressive, future where actually this is all controlled appropriately? And hence, David, my confusion this week.
What's he going on about, Ez?
Oh, well, you surely got me confused. I was like, lords, and then I left. I don't know.
This might be the first time that the question is more confusing than the actual subject.
I think I explained that quite well. No, but you see this thing about technology platforms taking control. That's the point.
Let's thank our listeners if they're still on.
Yeah. Thanks for staying with us through that.
We're confused why everybody's still listening to this podcast.
We'll get to the good bit in a minute. Don't worry.
Well, that's deflated me.
So do you
Cheers,
mean,
guys, for all the support.
Are you basically edging towards what X has done in the US.
So you got YouTube, X, you've got things like that, where actually they can influence people much more and in a much more serious way than we might hope. And that is affecting election outcomes. There's lots of talk about technology changing the way we interact as a society. And it's all that control is concentrated inside a very small community of tech players.
Yeah, right. So I think you might be right, Rob. And I think X in the US is probably the biggest example in my head at the moment of having such significant influence directly. Now, in terms of like whether we're all just going to get trapped on platforms, I don't know the answer to that, because blue sky is emergent, isn't it? No pun intended. So maybe the power of the crowd might have an influence in the power of the platform.
Yeah, but that's like the upstart to the Lord trying to take control. Do they have enough influence and power to be able to do it? And time will tell, because there's this concept of mass exodus to this new platform, Blue Sky. Yeah. So is platform shift occurring, or is it not? Or will the gravity ping back? And what we've seen with other social media platforms that attempt to rise in competition with what we know today, or the traditional players, we see they get squashed, basically.
Well, time will tell, and I think we'll get a first instance, won't we, of understanding this when we see whether listeners actually do end up pinging back from Blue Sky onto X, or listeners rather, contributors to that platform. So let's keep an eye on that. That was both a confusing question, and I don't think we got anywhere close to unraveling it.
I should remain confused, David. Thank you for the support in this matter.
You're very welcome. Now, moving on to our guest for the day. So, Alex, why don't we start with your background? Bring us up to speed on the journey that you've taken.
Okay, so I'm Brazilian, first of all, so I reside in London for 10 years now. So I'm an electrical engineer, with a Master of Science in electrical engineer as well, and I'm a professional that delivers transformation. So that's what I have been doing for many, many years. So more recently, in the last 10 years, I have been working firstly with Kraft Heinz as a VP for Global Business Services here in UK. And then I moved to AstraZeneca in UK as well, but in Cambridge, also related to Global Business Services. And for the last 5 years and a half, I have been working at Unilever, also responsible for big transformations, global transformations. That's my summary.
So when you look, so that's a great CV in terms of some of the organizations you've worked in over the course of the last 20 some years. And you've worked on change programs in each of those organizations with different cultures and different challenges and different markets. What observations have you got when you look back across them? Do you see commonality in them, or do you see actually, kind of each organization has its own unique way of executing change?
Yes, I see both, but I think we have to appreciate, for example, in the list that I have provided now in the last 10 years. So we have now a health science company, and I have two FMCG companies. Their culture is completely different. So the approach for transformation is also very worlds apart, I would say. And you have to take that into consideration, because at some point we all have now the same. Of course, we have the business objective in mind when we start a transformation. So, but the culture of the company drives the path for reaching those business objectives. So, I would say that's one key point that is often overlooked, because if you want to approach a challenge, we have a prescriptive, like a mathematical recipe how to put together transformation A, B, C. If you don't consider in which culture we are, it's going to be much harder. So
did you see between the two FMCG organizations, for example, was that a similar culture? Because it's very easy, isn't it, to sort of broad brush that whole sectors have very similar cultures. Do you think that holds true, or do you think to each organization its own?
I think it's more of the second, Dave. So I think it's, of course, Kraft Heinz is closer to Unilever in terms of the culture. and very far from, both of them are very far from AstraZeneca. But no, even when we compare FMCG companies, I think that there's also a big difference. So the point is, don't put together, the recipe, regardless of the culture. You have to start with the culture and consider that culture as a kind of guardrails of your transformation. So I can establish many items that are different from Kraft Heinz compared with Unilever. So, and building in those two different universes, you have to be mindful of those differences.
How do you, when you first enter such an organization, Alex, how do you grasp that culture? Where do you look at to get an idea what type of culture you're facing?
Well, there's very different signals. So when I'm going to share my story, when I was in my interview to AstraZeneca, so the person interviewed me and said, "No, you're coming from a fast-moving consuming group, FMCG company. F stands for fast. You don't have to be so fast here." So that was during the interview, I got the first signal as me. So, but no, because and it's nothing wrong with that. I think it was a great call that he made when he was interviewing me, because that set the tone. So. And of course, then you understand in the governance of the company how people interact, how people conduct their meetings, how they are. For example, this is something I would like to explore today with you. So, how they treat creativity and innovation. Many people talk about innovation, creativity, but no, different companies have actually different appetites for bringing to life innovation. So it start trying to probe that.
You mentioned that as you're embarking on a change program, taking the culture into account first and letting it create guardrails for the change. Just explain to us how you handle that process. So, and how is that different from maybe other change programs you've seen kick off?
Yes, I think that one important perspective that I consider is the blueprint approach. So many companies, I'm not talking about Unilever now. I'm talking as a general. And besides, before moving to London, I was many years with the consulting business. So that's why my experience also comes from. I think it's important to understand that many companies see transformations as a tool implementation only.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
I know it's like, I know the drill. It's about implementing an ERP globally, which in itself a super big challenge. I'm not saying different here. So, but the point is that it's never tools implementation only. And it's about tools. It's about data. It's about analytics. It's about organization. It's about people. It's about change management. Also another aspect that is super common in my view is that we treat change management as a synonym of many different things. So everyone has a meaning for that, and to me is very detailed and with a big number of disciplines that constitute what change management is. So I think what is important to do is to consider that blueprint, all those transformation dimensions, as I like to say, as opposed to fixing ourselves to only the tool, the challenge of implementing a tool. So
I think, you raise a very, very good point, which is when you enter an organization and you need to deliver change, what I really like what you're saying is you work with the way the organization operates today, and you have to almost change it within the constructs of what it can cope with. Yeah, you get some examples where people have gone into change and they kind of try and be too dramatic and rage against the machine and try and tear it all up. But actually, you've still got to keep everything going whilst you're changing it in very large organizations, especially on such a global scale. And I think that point about you've got to understand what you're changing first before you just go in with preconceived ideas and I'm going to change the world. And this is, the system itself, if it's not happy with what you're trying to do, can become very passive aggressive against change. And I don't know if you've got a viewpoint on the sort of, if you've seen where people haven't been able to take that culture on board and where they've struggled with the change and the sort of where they maybe should have adapted their approach.
Yeah, so Rob, 2 points here. I think first we have to understand why the organization wants the change. So, and what's the flexibility that the organization has in achieving that change? Let me give you an example. When I was in a specific company, not Unilever, in a different company, GBSs they are implemented like typically in a vertical structure, right? So finance, HR, and blah blah blah. So I was convinced that was the wrong way to do that. So I suggested a horizontal way because that way would have more benefits, But that was too much for the organization. The organization reacted to that. So it's both equally important to understand what the organization wants with the change in terms of value, but also the flexibility the organization has, because too much creative, even if you can support with no business outcomes that will come as a result of that creativity, might be too much. So to Esmee point, so we have to read those signs, because otherwise you're going to be presenting something that will look sci-fi to the LT, and it's like you're someone detached from the reality of the challenge of the company. So I think this is super important.
How do you do that, Alex? Like when you're in the midst, because you're part of the system. Once you're in it, you're in it. Even though, we all think we're not and we can see it from the side, but you're in it. How do you do that? How do you use your senses like on a daily basis where you're in the middle of those moments?
I learn a lot with my mistakes, Esmee, to be honest. And usually people tell their stories based on their success. So I also learn when I make a mistake. So let me give you an example. When I was in AstraZeneca, I was in a meeting and I was suggesting that horizontal approach. And I created a process called, just like you have procurement to payment, order to cash, something to something. I created the discovery to distribution. I thought that was very creative of mine, because we would have a horizontal multi-competency thing. I think that would be great. Their reaction was not good at all. So I realized during the meeting that I have gone too far here. So I realized I had made a mistake, and that's how I learn also.
What did you see? What happened? Were they rebellious? Did they leave the meeting?
They didn't leave the meeting, but it was more like faces. They didn't engage with the idea. I was super ready to defend every aspect of the idea, but no, what I was not ready for is that to identify that I have transpassed the border of flexibility of that culture. That's what I'm saying. So even with my mistakes, I think that I know it's a cliche, but no, it's also true. When you make the mistakes, you learn so many important things that for life. So as much as you can be convinced about a given medicine is the optimal medicine, sometimes you don't have to give the optimal medicine to a patient. You have the medicine that the patient can absorb, if I can make that analogy. Not sure if I'm being inspired by AstraZeneca here.
But it's a great example of what I call organizational speed limits, which is sometimes you turn up, you go, right, we're going to go 90 miles an hour. And they go, no, we can just about get to 35. Yeah, it's that, which is how do I get you to 90? It's going to take a while. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great analogy as well, Rob. So I like it. Yeah. Spot on.
And when you're thinking about like cultural change, so we've talked about change within a culture, and sometimes, especially when we're talking about things like digital transformation or moving towards cloud culture or cloud native or those sorts of phrases, it implies an act of cultural change. And depending on who you're talking to, they'll either think that's actually impossible because the old culture eats strategy for breakfast stuff, like the culture will be what it will be, and to enact a change on it is kind of foolhardy. You've got to do the thing within the existing culture. Or do you think, kind of in the experience that you've had, that you can shift cultures and move cultures, particularly towards things like digital native?
In my experience, as I said before, so we have those guardrails, right? So, but no, I think change management is key It's a key discipline when trying to move what's possible to move, to change what's possible to change. But one has to also appreciate, as I mentioned before, in my experience, not in Unilever, but no, even in my consulting experience, each company has a view what change management is. For many, change management is a stakeholder management, which is correct, to your point, Dave. So we have to understand from each leadership, member, what their view is. That's one. But it's also training. It's very different from stakeholder management. It's also understanding market readiness, which is also very different from the two other ones. It's also creating a business simulation. It's also creating a new organization that will deliver that change. So you see, under the big umbrella of change management, there are so many diverse components that one has to observe. And to me, you have to be successful in the transformation. And to me, that's key. Because if you don't train the people, if you don't create an organization, if you don't engage with the stakeholders, if you don't simulate the operation of the transformation before you go live, even if you don't make sure to have a very detailed pre-go live checklist across all those transformation dimensions, and also a checklist that dictates what success looks like when the transform entities in operation. I think life is going to be super hard. So, and this is why I think that transformation, corporate global transformations, should be a very well structured discipline, because it's not only again about let's implement a tool. I know how to implement a tool. I know the drill. I'm going to implement a tool. It's never about implementing a tool. It's also about implementing all those dimensions and connect those dimensions to the value creation that we expect, because that's where transforming in the first place, right? So because we identify why the company wants the change, we have to prove that change is going to be feasible. So it's really a complex environment in that culture with those guardrails that we have talked about.
Yeah. So, one of Rob's favorite ways of changing culture is to send an email to everybody saying on Monday morning, we've got a new culture.
No, I've changed that, Dave, now. I've changed that now. We get everybody in a big room.
Excellent,
I stand on a stage and I say, we are digital now, and then I just walk off. That's the answer.
Go forth and
work
be digital.
Go forth and be digital.
You set the strategic direction. The rest will come as a result, Rob.
Exactly. I'll let them self-organize.
Four or five words can change the culture of an entire organization.
Yeah, there's big value in that, Rob. So.
And have you seen, on a serious note, an example of, you can choose which way you want to go with this, a change that has gone particularly badly because it didn't engage with the corporate culture or the corporate tick speed that Rob was talking about, or conversely, it's Friday, we can do a happy one, one that went well. And why did it go well?
No, Dave, as much as I disclose a mistake of mine here in a very honest fashion, I'm going to be equally honest saying I never took part in a transformation that did not succeed.
Right.
So I was lucky enough, and I was very well accompanied, of course, with many, many brilliant people. So I can tell you about stories that now are successful ones. So I would like, if you don't mind, choose IOPS, Integrated Operations.
Yeah, please do. So, and this is a Unilever program.
That's a Unilever program. So IOPS is now, so we have, in the past, like 5 years ago, Unilever is divided by function. So we have a market operating, then we have the finance function, we have the supply chain function, and so on and so forth. Integrated operations is and you can imagine how happy I got when I landed here in Unilever and to contribute in integrated operations. It's a horizontal approach comparing to my previous story. So it's a horizontal approach where we take several processes from the markets, and we move them from vertical to horizontal. So we create a truly multi-competency process. and we have to, of course, it was a global project, and of course we have very specific benefits in mind. We are going to operate the markets on behalf of the markets, right? So it was very challenging. So we have three types of markets. We have modern trade, distributed trade, and e-commerce. Modern trade is a monolithic one. So big retail companies. So they'll have distributed trade, which is very, very with different natures and sizes of clients. And we have e-commerce. With Unilever have at least 6 business models. So we have to do that across finance, S&OP, supply chain, logistics, and order to cash and P2P at the end. So it's to a certain extent was creating a GBS, but we don't name that. We name integrated operations, and it has been tremendously successful. I was the design lead of that integrated approach, and of course we use lots of change management there. Another thing that I have learned here in Unilever, in my previous experiences, I was not exposed to that, but I was exposed that to Unilever, and I'm really grateful. Is the attention to financial risk and controls, because when you do transformations like we have been talking so far, let's transform, even if we have the superstructure transformation recipe, even considering the culture of the organization and all the change management aspects, it's very common that we forget the implications of the financial risk and controls. Yeah. So this was, I think, a very successful thing in IOPS project as well, because all the transformations had this additional guardrail. Because, for example, there's the experience of outsourcing things. Right, so when we outsource our activities to a third party, we're having a changing event. So our people stop doing that. A third party company starts doing that. That's a change event from financial controls risk. So we have to observe the process that we are designing, have to take into account that dimension as well. So this is an example of a very successful transformation. I'm very happy and proud to be part of that with a very big team. But no, it's also an example of the complexity of successful transformations, Dave.
And it's a very interesting point. Again, you raised there around risk and how people perceive risk and how that varies cross-sector, cross-industry, etc. Because often if you come into a situation and you don't understand where risk is and you go to try and deliver change, you can often come a cropper. And once suddenly there's this dawning realization that when you properly understand the risk, then you go, oh yeah, we need to do that differently. And I think that's often a culture clash where people enter a new industry but don't quite appreciate that risk balance that has to be struck. And I think that's a challenge that if you don't get it right, it's a painful experience all round.
True. Yes. So this is, and I agree, Rob, but also take into consideration that the risk I'm talking about is the financial risk of for example, when they change, which is connected to what you have said to some extent, but just to give you more details, everything that in the transformation that touch the profit and loss of the company. We have to be very careful, because I can't make a mistake there. So that's the risk in your context, but also in my context. I'm joining your comment with mine. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's true. So you have to be very detailed. Have to have a very detailed approach, how to sort out and mitigate each possibility of risk that we have there. Just to be precise here.
I think to nail that in future, Rob, you're going to have to add another bullet point to your email communication on...
and control risk as you do it. Yeah. Don't crash the company into the wall, please.
Well, talking about communications, how important is that, Alex? Because I think the stories you tell and everything that you do, requires good communications.
Yes, this is very, very difficult and important at the same time. Because as pointed out by Dave before, we're talking to different groups of people, right? So, yes, so we have to understand who you're talking to and tell the story. The way I put it, it seems that and it's true. transformation is really complex and detailed, but nobody wants to listen to this scientific mumbo jumbo, so this how intelligent this guy is and how complicated this guy is. You have to also, how I'm going to tell that story to someone that's doesn't have all those elements, but it's important that now I engage them because they have a crucial role in that transformation. So how, in other words, it's like different languages that we have to translate from one language to the other so that the communication is established and we can trigger what's expected from that specific group. Not only trigger, but help them to engage and be co-authors of the transformations in their domain. And this is very difficult, Esmee, so really difficult. So. And again, this is one of the disciplines that the change management brings, one of the many. So again, that's my point again. So change managers are many important things together, of different natures together, as opposed to just stakeholder management or training. So how we tell the story, is super important. And again, in the beginning of IOPS, it was really difficult to tell the story. We have how I'm going to tell the story. It's too complicated. So we had it was not something that we found out in the first month of the project. We had to have several iterations there to make sure we're in the right channel, communicating the right things to the right different audiences. But it's really difficult. It's really difficult.
When you talk about IOPS as an example, there's a lot in that. You've got standardization as a core where we should work in the same way where it's sensible, but then you've got deviation in there. But you've also got this power balance changing. So you talked about on behalf of the market. So the markets used to be king, they run the P&L, they had control, and then they're sort of ceding control away a bit more to the standards in the center. I'd be interested in your view on when power bases like that change. Do you have a viewpoint on how to manage that effectively? Because as responsibility is shifting around an organization, that can create a lot of emotion as people feel like they might not be as much in control as they used to be. Be interested on your reflections on that as part of that program.
No, that's very true. And that's a big challenge. Let me answer your question with a previous experience of mine in Anheuser-Busch InBev, ABI. So in ABI was created their global business services, and they are very talking about culture. Let's try to connect all the elements here. ABI has a very aggressive culture, so it's an owner culture. There's no gray areas in ABI. Yeah. Just black and white. No, who is responsible for that? It's Bob or it's Dave, but it's never Dave and Bob. So you're going to be guilty. You're going to be a hero. So it's very clear. So when you're creating, and I was a consultant there, but now your question triggered me that memory. So I'm going to share with you. So we're taking lots of functions or tasks from many areas and centralized them in the global business service, which became the embryo of the entire global ABI GBS today. And then exactly what I've said, there was super big resistance. Because if I'm giving my tasks to you, I'm losing the power because the proxy is the number of people I have, not the value that I bring. So it was really, really difficult. And then we did some interesting things because we know they would be so very, very much objective. At the same moment, we removed that headcount from them and landed that FTE in the GBS organization. We locked them to hire any additional resource. Every time they raise their request for higher resource, why are you asking to hire resource? No, because I want this person to do A, B, C, and D for me. No, now it's going to be done by the center. So we blocked them to do that. And then we delivered the success. And that when it was a pivotal moment for them. They understood the model was bring a value. And then it was very interesting because they also understand super fast. So they said, I want to give more tasks to you. The things swapped, flipped. I want to give you. Initially they have given us just transactional activities. So I want you guys to absorb my non-transactions activity as well. So we have to deliver the model in a successful way to conquer that resistance that was based on power abandon. So they feel that they are losing power, but then that changed with the subsequent success, and they became great allies of the subsequent operation because they understood the value of the model. It's not about headcount. It's about the value that we plan to bring and we measure that was brought.
Yeah.
It's a great example of seeing is believing. As soon as they saw the advantage, they went, right, I'm on that.
Yes, but no, the journey is not a calm sea. It's waves all the time, thunders.
Rough seas.
So yes.
Seems to me, just building on that point, that there is a process, I think, with key stakeholders around a change when you're in the middle of it and when you're trying to enact some form of change, is to be legitimately active listening to those stakeholders. So many people seem to think that in change management, it is a one-way communication stream, and I'm announcing things to people and I'm letting them know where we're going. And actually, to me, it's a two-way exchange, and it's okay to allow the transformation to be shaped and morphed by that. Do you think?
I think that question is a good example of depends on the culture, you know. So for example, let me compare. In ABI, I think it's more of the first, not listening too much. You know, that's where I want to go.
Yeah,
let's get there.
Push through at all counts.
And again, this is not bad to Esmee point. So we have to understand the signals of the culture of the company. That's why that company is successful. So It has to be like this. Another example, when I was presenting the project in a convention in Chicago of the company to 300 people, very silent audience. And when I finished, someone grabbed my shoulder. It was the CEO.
Right.
And the CEO said, guys, let me tell you one thing. This is not Alex's project. This is my project. I'll be super disappointed if you don't help Alex to succeed. That's one example. So
that's a useful bit of sponsorship.
That's an example. So in that context, Dave, no listening was involved. Even though I agree with your rule, but
no listening was required.
Was required. But for example, in AstraZeneca's case, which operates with much bigger margins compared with an MCG company, things are different. We really have to listen. So as I said, one recipe is that don't think you have the recipe for the challenge. Learn the recipe as you go. Because the culture is driving that. You have to. Each company is different from each other. I know this is a cliche, but it's also true. Because
it's a cliche that it may be, but a lot of people forget it, don't they?
Yes. Because we're all very well trained and we read many books, the power of listening, blah blah. But no, when you are in the foxhole in the fight, it is all going to depend in which foxhole you are. And that book might be of not use, So
very true. Maybe to bring our conversation maybe full circle and to a little bit of a close for this time, I just want to see what you think are in your mind when people say phrases like digital transformation, and increasingly, I think we're going to see AI transformation as a phrase. Mm-hmm. What do those things mean to you? You opened the call by saying that these transformations are not just tool deployments. What more for you is going on within a digital or an AI transformation, for example?
Yes. Okay, so at first, my first reaction to digital transformation, I'm going to, for the moment, put AI aside, okay?
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I think it's a different animal. Digital transformation is one more dimension in that blueprint that I have mentioned. So I have to approach a given challenge, understand what the company expects in terms of benefits, tangible and intangible benefits of that transformation, and create the articulation across all those dimensions: process, technology, organization, and technology. And so in digital, we have, for example, in terms we can measure, for example, one example would be the percentage of automation that we can have in that transformation. That would be an example of digital transformation. Or the usage of Internet of Things in those processes that were created, a new process. That would be an example of transformation. Yeah. So to answer your question, taking digital transformation with that connotation, I would just distribute those elements that I have just mentioned, for example, automation, Internet of Things, across the process and technology and DNA. And I'll keep with those 4 dimensions for the transformation, as I call it, for short, blueprint. But AI is a different story. But sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to comment on your categories, the sort of people, process, and technology categories. And I've been in a number of conversations around sort of digital transformation, where I've sort of kind of described what all of what's likely to go on and some of the challenges and things like that. And people return at the end and say, "Oh, is that just people, process, and technology then?" And it always gives me pause for thought, and it does, because my initial reaction is actually, no, it feels like it's more than that. Like it's like that on steroids, versus where you're doing a people, process, and technology change around, say, like an ERP implementation or something like that. Am I just kind of howling at the moon, or do you see any distinction between the two things?
No, I see a distinction, because the more we have to, every time a new element comes into play, we have to think how we're going to use that, right? So that's where creativity is key, So for example, Internet of Things, I can use Internet of Things, for example, to have a camera on an ice cream cabinet, checking everything. That's creativity, So, but it's a creativity that we can, for example, share that with there's a component of process there, because when the camera detects that we have to have a replenishment in that cabinet, triggers something that there's a process going to be involved. Of course, there's technology there, the camera itself. So those new elements, and that's why I put AI aside, because I think AI is different, okay? Those new elements, automation, IoT, and the like of it, they can be projected onto the 4 business dimensions that I mentioned. I don't think that's the case with AI. Not sure if you want to explore that now, but no, I think AI is a very, very different thing. So AI to me is very transformational. So, for example, we have been exposed to different transformations before, right? So we have been to the downsizing, right sizing, the ERP revolution, the database revolution. All those revolutions came.
Yeah, I fought in the ERP wars of the early noughties.
Yeah, it's spearheaded by a company, right? When I say ERP, you think about a company, right?
Yeah,
when I say database, you
right.
think about a company. When I talk about internet, you think about a company. Which company you think when I mention AI? There is not a single company, in my opinion. There's a plethora of companies trying to do many interesting things, but no, AI is really it's really a tsunami in my view. It's going to change even how we transform. Let me give you an example. I can use AI in my transformations that I have designed so far with you. So all those 4 dimensions, I can use AI to simulate the organizational structure that's going to be necessary to run that operation. I can think how I'm going to change the organization of a company using. Let me instead of using the AI, using machine learning to do that. Maybe I can create organizations that are dynamic. They're not structured as we have always seen. So again, AI is a new thing that combines, in my vision, mathematics, with creativity. So it's very, and then I would have, if I didn't have difficulty to projecting digital transformation to my 4 layers of the blueprint, I would have difficulty trying to understand to project an AI app into those things as well. It's very different, a very different animal. And I think companies are still trying to understand how to reorganize to deliver those challenges.
Agreed.
Nobody has a doubt that's going to be disruptive. I think the doubt is about the pace, but I think early adopters will of course, benefit from a competitive advantage. Yeah. It's a mystery in itself, and that's my view. It's going to change everything. It's going even this prescription that I have given here in the beginning of our conversation in terms of transformation.
I think you're right. We got really lucky when we launched this show because we actually launched it at the time ChatGPT launched about 2 years ago. So we've had the sort of the benefit of tracking, like just the holding a mirror up to the progress and the rate of change over the course of the last couple of years. And I think what you just said is very true. The world is going to look like a very different place, and maybe as quickly as 5 years' time. But I wanted to just end today's conversation by going back to a notion that you have touched on throughout, and it's one that I'm personally really passionate about as well, which is this notion of creativity in transformation, and creativity in business. Maybe just expand on that a little bit and why it's so important to you, and then what advice would you give to organizations that maybe haven't unleashed enough creativity?
Okay. Before I answer your question, let me just add two elements. This transformation, is crucial for every company. So in the past, many years ago, companies were buying mainframes in a black box, right? So my first advice would be have skilled people in AI, machine learning in your company, because otherwise you are going to be buying a new black box, of the 21st century, that encapsulates AI. Because AI, so I mentioned to you the 4 dimensions, right? So, and one of the things that you have to do before you transform is test. How do you test an AI application? Can someone ask me that?
Rob asks it cheese jokes and to write haikus.
It does things I can't do much better than me. So there you go.
So it's very difficult. So I think my advice would be the companies have to understand that this challenge is unique. So it's like the third revolution, industrial revolution that we are. So, and we can't have an organization facing the third industrial revolution as we had before. So that's, to your question now, where creativity comes into importance, because what's going to be this new organization structure that we're going to have? How can I endow the company with the knowledge to not buy black box that will eventually expose us from any in general data protection, for example? Of course, the app is going to do what's expected, but because the app is programming itself, how can you be sure that this is going to not to breach any law or anything like that? So how to test? So I think the more than ever, we need creative people having ideas, taking a look at the landscape, and understand how we can, in a secure fashion, bring to life transformations in the AI space that will deliver the objectives that we want. And how we communicate, tell our story, change management, everything in doing that in a fast way so that we can achieve benefits early. It's a big riddle, but at the same time, it's a big moment to be living, because it's strong, it's compelling, and transformative. So as a professional related to transformations, I feel the moment is great. So that's my view.
And Ez, what have you been thinking about this week?
Well, obviously, the animal that just got pulled into the room, AI.
Oh, no. The spectre of.
Yeah, I know. And it's actually, you got me thinking, Rob. Yes, there again, you get a compliment. So wow. Good Friday for you.
I don't think we signed that off, Marcel, did we?
Compliment. No, I'm not allowed them. I'm not allowed them, Esmee. Marcel's very strict.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dominance, overlord, complete control. Won't allow
I'll put it back into the jar. So when you,
look at his little face. It's gone red. Fine. Look how mad he is.
Okay, so I went to an event, as I just talked about, and Mo Gavdad was actually on stage.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
And oh my God, that was so inspiring. I just love the way that he talked, but it also resonates. Of course, he's talking about AI. He's been doing that for quite some years now. AI in terms of happiness and the correlation between the two.
Right.
And Rob actually talked about mental models. Are we going for AI from a mental model that we structure it, that we create a blueprint, and from there tackle AI?
This conversation.
Well, that was one of my confusions. Will LLMs and chaos work, or will we need models to improve to get to AGI? I think that was
the conversation where we helped you understand why architecture exists, wasn't it, Rob?
Yes.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, thanks.
That's the one. So I took some time and also, of course, listened to Mo at his talk. And he's actually, I think this is, I'm very curious about your thoughts. He's talking about AI like a child that we're going to raise together. And how you raise your children is, if you want to have a beautiful, better world, and he's actually also showing that as a utopian, beautiful view, no matter what. We're going to get there, but it depends. Are we going to go there with a straight line, or are we first, go into doom and not so pleasant ways?
Well, that's a great analogy. If you think about it, the algorithm is nature and the nurture is the way we train the algorithm
and that's
to come
what he's
together.
Saying.
I really like that viewpoint, which is bad nurturing is going to create a hellscape.
Yeah.
Skynet rises.
It's a call to action because we feed it. So every time we ask questions, we can I had an example this week. There was a former colleague of mine that was talking about, I now used Copilot on Teams, and I was part of a meeting and then I left the meeting, but I was sure that they were talking about me. So I asked Copilot in the summary of that same meeting, what did they tell about me?
Oh,
and did they get the results they weren't expecting?
I had Mo in the back of my head and I said, well, you could also ask them, what type of compliments were they giving me?
Yes, they tended to the negative before the positive.
And that's how we're raising AI.
Way,
do we want to have Copilot have those negative thoughts, or do we want to have it in a more positive way? So
we had Michelle Zhao from Juji on the show a couple of seasons ago, and her organization, she was a startup on the West Coast. She spent most of her life, I think, working on Watson at IBM and was now creating a company that was doing kind of instant pop-up chatbots like Gen AI chatbots. And that episode is actually called Developing and Nurturing AI. And it was exactly the same. Her perspective was very aligned to Mo's in the sense of, you're training these things. That's an important word, isn't it? Training it isn't a single dimensional, I'm just training this thing like a slave to do a task. You are training all kinds of like reactions and things like that. It's a multidimensional piece. And you're right, with human nature's, kind of gravitate often towards utilitarian darkness. You get what you deserve, don't you?
I think we can even circle back to culture again then, Alex. Because if you have AI growing up in your company, how is your culture is probably going to end up being integrated in your AI.
Yes, I think the company, back to the creativity topic that we discussed before, we have really to rethink how the company is organized. Let me give you an example. If with all those dimensions that we have considered here, we give AI to the IT group only.
God help us. God help us.
Trusting central IT again.
Yes, maybe it's very. I think it's, if I put myself in their position, it could be super complex to do that because it's bigger than IT. As I said before, I think AI to me, machine learning in particular, because I think AI is like a fantasy name. So machine learning is math and creativity. So it is a tool that should be widespread. Any team in the company should be knowledgeable and fluent in that language, and because they will be able to use their creativity to create the things that will hopefully deliver sustainable advantage, market
But if
advantage.
you talk about creativity, right, and the fact that a lot of organizations miss the importance of creativity in transformation, as we were talking about before. Man, Esmee, that goes 1,000-fold for training AI. I loved your point on AI in an organization is going to be reflective of its culture. And can you see situations where you might have sections of HR that are there to steward the training of AI?
Yes, and to be honest, I think Unilever has done a fantastic job earlier in the year where we train our global population in terms of what AI is. So we opened our agenda. Everybody in the world could attend that and be trained and understand what specific teams are doing with AI. So it was a great thing that has been done in Unilever in terms of training everyone. So the curious minds were certainly triggered by that information that was delivered. But HR has an important HR and the entire leadership of any company has an important challenge ahead, because how we're going to organize ourselves, and I think this is really important. How we're going to organize ourselves to deliver those AI transformations. What skills should we have? Because of course, at the end of the day, an application is coded, but in the times that even coding itself is done by applications, AI applications, the difference that will move the needle is the knowledge in two things. And it's I think this is very interesting. I'm very excited about that. So one is math knowledge. That's true. Maybe I'm not saying something that many people will agree or not, but that's my view. You have to be knowledgeable about math. There is a specific set of math elements in every algorithm, and this is important. But interestingly, the other ingredient is the creative minds. So back to your point, Dave, HR has a challenge to identify who are the creative minds in that corporation, because that now the name of the game is innovation. It's not repeat the same as we did all those years. We have to do something different. And who is going to lead us in that difference? The creative minds. So HR has to train itself first,
right?
To be able to understand, one, how I'm going to be organized, how I'm going to detect across my entire organization where those creative minds are, how I'm going to foster them, and how I'm going to make sure that as past time goes by, we have more people operating in that with that creative behavior, honestly and essentially creative people, because I think that's the people that are going to play a key role moving ahead. And I hope it's clear how different now AI is from digital transformation, as I put it. To me, it's a really a different animal.
Whole world in there. So thank you, Ez, for that provocation. And I think we're going to start diving into the scaling of AI transformation in the rest of this season and on, because it is a fascinating and, I agree, very different piece. But for today, Alex, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights. It's been a really, really rich conversation.
No, thank you, Dave. Thank you all for having me here today. It was a pleasure.
Well, thanks again. And now we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guest what they're excited about doing next. And that could be something in your personal life. It could be, I've got a great restaurant booked at the weekend, or it could be something in your professional life. So, Alex, what are you excited about doing next?
No, I'm really excited now, as you might imagine, with this transformation. I think you can tell how excited I am and my point of view. And I have been I started a PhD course in AI at UCL.
Cool.
So wow. So I'm trying to be one of those creative people in Unilever, and I think it's super important, because my thesis is about I cannot share the content of the thesis, but it's a very creative idea that's a disruptive idea using AI for Unilever.
Fantastic.
So I'm really excited about that. So as I said to you, I think the innovation and the creativity will come from science, unlike the other that comes with companies as an umbrella. I think now the intrapreneurship is a key aspect for any company.
Right.
You know, so
I agree.
That's why I'm excited about to be an exemplar of this entrepreneurship in Unilever, with my experience in now developing my PhD thesis in AI, and also helping to transform how we transform companies. You know, so that's what I'm excited about.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We look forward to that with interest, and maybe when you can talk about it properly, maybe come back on and blow our minds with it.
My pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you to our sound and editing wizards, Ben and Louis, our producer, Marcel, who is always there, no matter what, and Alex. Thank you for this really nice conversation that also keeps us going again in terms of new ways to see each other again in their next reality. And also thank you, Alex, as our guest, all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.